The morning Willow Green's own father declared her too quiet for any decent man to want was the same morning a stranger's calloused hand would change the course of her life forever. The words hung in the kitchen air like smoke from a dying fire, thick and suffocating. Willow's fingers stilled on the bread dough she'd been kneading since dawn, her knuckles white against the pale flour. Through the window, she could see her younger sister Phoebe laughing with the blacksmith's son, her voice carrying across the dusty yard like birdsong. Everything Willow had never been. "Speak up, girl." Her father barked from his seat at the worn wooden table. "That's your problem right there. A man wants a wife who can hold conversation, not some mouse who jumps at shadows." Willow's throat worked, but no words came. They never did when it mattered most. She'd learned years ago that silence was safer than stumbling over syllables that tangled in her mouth like barbed wire. The screen door creaked, and her mother entered with an armload of laundry, her face already arranged, in that familiar expression of weary disappointment. "Willow, Mrs. Dalton stopped by earlier. Said her boy Zane's been asking after you." A pause, heavy with unspoken judgment. "I told her you weren't ready for courting." "Not ready." The polite way of saying not suitable. Willow pressed her lips together, tasting salt, whether from tears or the perspiration beading her upper lip in the stifling kitchen, she couldn't tell. At 22, she'd watched every girl in their small Texas town find her match, their laughter echoing from church socials and harvest dances while she lingered in corners, invisible as wallpaper. "The Henderson boys coming by today," her father continued, not looking up from his coffee. "Archer Navarro. Heard he's looking for a wife to help with his ranch. Quiet type might suit him. He's got a stutter, something fierce." A stutter. So that's what she'd been reduced to, a charitable match for the damaged goods nobody else wanted. The bread dough blurred through her tears, but Willow kept kneading, kept working her frustration into the yielding mass. Outside, Phoebe's laughter rang out again, bright and effortless as Sunday bells. Some women were born to fill rooms with their presence. Others, like Willow, were meant to fade into the background, useful but unremarkable that she'd made peace with. That truth years ago, or so she'd thought. The sound of approaching horses drew her attention to the window. A lone rider was making his way up the dirt path to their house, his figure cutting a stark silhouette against the morning sky. This would be Archer, then, her last chance at respectability, her father's final attempt to make something useful of his eldest daughter. But as the rider drew closer, Willow found herself studying his posture, the easy way he sat his horse, the confident tilt of his shoulders. Nothing about him suggested the broken man she'd been expecting. His hair caught the sunlight, dark as rich earth after rain, and when he dismounted with fluid grace, she glimpsed the lean strength in his movements that a knock at the front door sent. Her mother scurrying to answer it, her voice already pitched to that false brightness she reserved for important visitors. "Mr. Navarro, what a pleasure. Please, come in, come in." Willow's hands flew to her hair, suddenly aware of the flour dusting her apron, the simple brown dress that had seen better years. She wasn't prepared for this, wasn't ready to be inspected and found wanting by yet another man who'd probably take one look at her and decide his loneliness wasn't quite desperate enough. "Pa, this is Archer Navarro," her mother's voice carried from the front room. "Mr. Navarro, my husband Samuel Green." The murmur of male voices followed, too low for her to distinguish words, but she caught the cadence of polite conversation. No stutter that she could detect. Perhaps it only emerged when he was nervous, or perhaps her father had been mistaken entirely. "Willow," her mother's voice cracked like a whip. "Come meet our guest." Her feet felt leaden as she made her way to the front room, each step an effort of will. She paused in the doorway, one hand gripping the frame for support, and found herself looking into the most startling pair of green eyes she'd ever seen. Archer Navarro was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 30, with weathered skin that spoke of years under the Texas sun and laugh lines that suggested he found more joy in life than she'd ever known. When he smiled at her, actually smiled, not the polite grimace she'd grown accustomed to, something fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird. "Miss Green." His voice was warm molasses over gravel, rich and unhurried. "I'm mighty pleased to make your acquaintance." She opened her mouth, closed it again. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Too quiet for any decent man to want. The silence stretched between them, awkward and telling, until she was certain he could see right through to her inadequacy. But instead of the impatience she expected, Archer's smile widened. Beautiful morning, isn't it? I passed your garden. On the way in, those roses are something special. Takes a gentle hand to coax such beauty from this harsh ground. Roses. She'd planted them herself, tended them through drought and storm, whispered to them in the early morning when no one else was awake to hear. They were her one small rebellion against the barrenness that seemed to define everything else in her life. I. The word caught in her throat, barely audible. Yes, ma'am. He leaned forward slightly, not with the exaggerated patience of someone humoring a simpleton, but with genuine attention, as if her words, however halting, were worth waiting for. Her father shifted in his chair, the wooden legs scraping against the floor with obvious impatience. What my daughter's trying to say is that she's pleased to meet you, Mr. Navarro. Though I should warn you, she's not much for conversation. Heat flooded Willow's cheeks, but Archer's expression didn't change. If anything, his smile grew warmer. In my experience, Mr. Green, the folks with the most worthwhile things to say are often the ones who choose their words most carefully. The simple kindness of it hit her like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had defended her? When had anyone suggested that her silence might be a virtue rather than a failing? I tend my roses at dawn, she found herself saying, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. When the air is still cool and the world is quiet. Archer's eyes lit up with genuine interest. Dawn's the best time for most things, I reckon. The cattle are calm, the air's clear, and a man can think without the whole world clamoring for his attention. He paused, studying her face with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable, but somehow didn't. I'd be honored to see those roses, Miss Green, if you'd be willing to show them to me. Her mother made a small sound of approval, but Willow barely heard it. All her attention was focused on this man who seemed to see something in her that even she didn't recognize. Ah, yes, I'd like that. Splendid. Archer stood, his movements fluid and assured. Perhaps we could take a walk around the property? I understand you've got quite the vegetable garden as well. As they stepped out into the morning sunlight, Willow felt the familiar weight of expectation settling on her shoulders. Men had walked with her before, made polite conversation, gone through the motions of courtship. But they'd all seen through her eventually, recognized the emptiness where sparkling personality should have been. Yet something about Archer's presence felt different. He didn't fill the silence with nervous chatter or point out obvious things just to keep words flowing between them. Instead, he seemed content to let the quiet stretch, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the whisper of wind through the mesquite trees. Tell me about your roses, he said finally, as they approached the small garden plot she'd carved out behind the house. And in that moment, watching the way the morning light caught the gold flecks in his eyes, Willow began to wonder if perhaps her father had been wrong about something else entirely. Maybe quiet wasn't a flaw to be overcome. Maybe it was simply a different kind of strength, one that the right person might actually appreciate. But first, she'd have to find the courage to let him see who she really was beneath the silence, and pray that when she did, it would be enough to keep this man from walking away like all the others. The roses bloomed in defiant beauty against the harsh Texas landscape, their petals soft as silk despite the unforgiving sun that beat down on everything else. Willow knelt beside her favorite bush, a climbing rose she'd coaxed up a makeshift trellis of old fence posts, and felt her tongue loosen in the presence of something she truly understood. This one's a Lady Banks, she said, her voice gaining strength as she touched the delicate yellow blooms. Mama said it was foolish to try growing something so delicate out here, but she's tougher than she looks. Had to learn to survive drought and dust storms. Archer crouched beside her, close enough that she could smell leather and sage on his clothes, close enough to see the genuine admiration in his eyes. Sounds like she's got more in common with her gardener than your mama might realize. The compliment hit her like a gentle blow to the chest. She glanced up at him, startled by the warmth in his voice, and found herself caught in his steady gaze. Most men looked past her or through her, but Archer seemed to see something worth lingering over. I talk to them, she admitted, the words slipping out before she could stop them. In the mornings, when no one's around. Phoebe says it's peculiar, but they seem to like the sound of voices. Nothing peculiar about it. I talk to my horses all the time. His smile was crooked, boyish. They're better listeners than most folks, and they don't judge a man for saying foolish things. A laugh escaped her, actual laughter, bright and surprised. When was the last time someone had made her laugh? The sound felt foreign in her throat, rusty from disuse. There it is, Archer said softly. What? The woman behind, all that quiet. She's got quite a smile. Heat flooded her cheeks, but for once it felt pleasant rather than shameful. She stood, brushing dirt from her skirts, and led him further into the garden. Here, surrounded by the fruits of her labor, she felt more confident, more like herself. The tomatoes are late this year, she said, gesturing to the neat rows of plants. But the beans are doing well, and the squash. She trailed off, suddenly aware that she was chattering about vegetables while he probably had important ranch business to discuss. Go on, he encouraged. I run cattle, but I've been thinking about putting in a kitchen garden. Could use the advice of someone who knows what she's doing. You really want to hear about squash? The question came out more incredulous than she'd intended. I really want to hear about anything that puts that light in your eyes. The words hung between them like a challenge, and Willow felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tight bands that had held her voice captive for so long. But before she could respond, Phoebe's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. Willow, there you are. Her sister appeared around the corner of the house, all golden curls and bright blue eyes, with young Zane Keller trailing behind her like a devoted puppy. Mama's been looking everywhere for you. Willow watched the predictable transformation happen in Archer's face, the subtle shift of attention, the way his eyes naturally gravitated toward Phoebe's vivacious beauty. It was always the same. Men came calling for the quiet green daughter and left enchanted by the bright one. You must be Mr. Navarro, Phoebe said, extending her hand with the easy confidence that had always eluded Willow. I'm Phoebe, Willow's sister. Mama mentioned you might be joining us for dinner. Miss Phoebe. Archer took her hand briefly, politely, but his eyes returned to Willow with an intensity that made her heart stutter. Your sister was just showing me her garden. It's remarkable what she's accomplished. Oh, Willow's always been good with growing things, Phoebe said with casual dismissal, though I keep telling her she should spend more time with people instead of plants. Don't you think so, Mr. Navarro? The question hung in the air like a trap, and Willow felt her old defenses rising. This was where it always went wrong, where her inadequacies became too obvious to ignore, but Archer's response surprised her. I think your sister has a rare gift for nurturing life where others might see only barren ground. That's not a skill to be taken lightly. Zane Keller, who'd been silent until now, finally found his voice. Phoebe's got a point, though. A woman needs to be sociable. Can't expect to find a husband hiding behind rose bushes. Zane. Phoebe's laugh was like silver bells, but Willow caught the sharp edge beneath it. You can't say such things. Why not? It's true. Take last week's church social. Willow barely said 2 words to anybody, just sat in the corner like a wallflower, while all the other girls were dancing and carrying on. Each word hit like a physical blow, and Willow felt herself shrinking inward, becoming smaller and smaller until she might disappear entirely. The confidence she'd felt moments before evaporated like morning dew under the scorching sun. That's enough. Archer's voice carried a warning that made Zane take a step back. A man would be lucky to have a woman who knows the value of listening over talking. Most folks could learn something from that kind of wisdom. I should go help Mama with dinner, Willow whispered, already backing toward the house. She couldn't bear to see the exact moment when Archer realized what everyone else already knew, that she was damaged goods, too broken for any decent man to want. But as she turned to flee, his hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. Wait. The single word stopped her cold. His touch was warm, calloused from years of ranch work, but infinitely gentle. She could feel her pulse hammering against his fingers and wondered if he could feel it too. I was hoping you might show me the rest of your flowers, he said quietly. If you're willing. She looked up at him, searching his face for signs of pity or obligation, but found only genuine interest. Behind them, she could hear Phoebe and Zane talking in low voices, probably discussing her latest humiliation. They're just roses, she said finally. No, Archer replied, his thumb brushing across her wrist in a gesture that sent heat spiraling through her veins. They're not just anything. And neither are you. The words hit her like a lightning strike, illuminating corners of her heart she'd forgotten existed. But even as hope began to bloom in her chest, a darker thought took root alongside it. What would happen when he discovered the truth about her past, about the real reason she'd learned to stay silent, and the secret that could destroy any chance of happiness she might dare to claim? 3 weeks later, Willow stood at her bedroom window watching Archer's familiar figure approach through the morning mist. He'd been coming by every few days, always with some excuse, bringing her seeds from his travels, asking advice about his own garden, or simply sharing coffee on the front porch while the world woke up around them. Each visit had peeled back another layer of her carefully constructed walls. With him, she'd discovered a voice she'd forgotten she possessed, one that could speak of dreams and fears, of the books she read in secret, and the places she longed to see beyond the dusty confines of their small town. But today felt different. Today, she was going to have to lie to the first person who'd ever truly seen her. "Morning, Miss Willow." Archer's voice carried through the screen door, warm as honey and tea. "I brought something for you." She smoothed her hands over her best blue dress, the one Phoebe had outgrown and passed down, and tried to calm the nervous flutter in her stomach. Through the kitchen window, she could see her parents exchanging meaningful looks over their coffee cups. After 3 weeks of regular visits, everyone in town was starting to talk. "Good morning, Archer." The use of his first name still felt daring on her tongue, but he'd insisted on it the week before, claiming formality had no place between friends. "You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about something you said yesterday, about how silence can be more honest than words." He stepped onto the porch, his presence immediately filling the space with that easy confidence she'd grown to cherish. "Made me realize I've been dishonest with you." Her heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" "I haven't been entirely truthful about why I came calling on you." He removed his hat, running his fingers through hair that was darker than midnight. "Your father told me you were quiet, suggested we might suit because I had difficulties of my own." The words confirmed what she'd suspected but hoped wasn't true. She was still the consolation prize, the damaged goods matched with another imperfect soul. "Your stutter," she said quietly, "among other things." His smile was rueful, self-deprecating. "But here's what I discovered. I don't stutter around you. Not once, not ever." "Do you know why?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Because you listen. Really listen. Most folks are so busy waiting for their turn to talk that they miss what's actually being said. But you." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. "You hear everything. The words and the silence between them." "Archer, there's more." He pulled a folded letter from his vest pocket. "This came yesterday. From my brother in California. He's been asking me to come west, help him start a horse ranch in the valleys outside Sacramento. The land is green year-round, he says. Water running free in the streams, and soil rich enough to grow anything." Willow's breath caught. "You're leaving?" "I'm thinking about it. Have been for weeks." He looked out over the harsh landscape, the endless brown that stretched to the horizon. "But I keep coming back to one question. What would be the point of paradise if I had to experience it alone?" The implication hung between them like a bridge she was afraid to cross. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'd like you to come with me. As my wife." The words hit her like a physical blow, beautiful and terrible at once. Everything she'd ever dreamed of was being offered to her on a silver platter. Love, adventure, a chance to start fresh where no one knew her as the quiet green daughter who couldn't hold a conversation, but she couldn't take it. Not when she was hiding the truth that would destroy everything between them. "I can't," she whispered. "Why not?" He reached for her hands, his touch sending warmth spiraling through her entire body. "We're good together, Willow. You make me better than I am. I see it in how you've started speaking up, how you laugh now. We could build something beautiful out there. You don't understand." She pulled away, the loss of his touch like a physical ache. "There are things about me you don't know. Things that would change how you see me. Try me." The simple words were both an invitation and a challenge. She looked into his eyes and saw only patience, only trust. It would be so easy to tell him everything. About the incident 3 years ago that had stolen her voice, about why she'd really learned to stay silent, about the shame that ate at her like acid every day. But before she could speak, the sound of approaching horses shattered the moment. A group of riders was coming up the path, led by a man whose presence made her blood run cold, Travis Brooks. The banker's son who'd left town in disgrace 3 years ago, the same week Willow had stopped speaking in public. The man whose wandering hands and whispered threats had taught her that sometimes silence was the only weapon a woman had. Well, well, Travis called out as he dismounted, his smile sharp as a blade. If it isn't little Willow Green, still playing the shy maiden, I see. Archer stepped protectively in front of her, his entire demeanor changing in an instant. Brooks, heard you were back in town. Just for a few days. Business to attend to. Travis's eyes found Willow over Archer's shoulder, and she saw the cruel amusement there. Though I have to say, I'm surprised to see you courting our quiet little flower here. Especially since she's not quite as innocent as she pretends to be. That's enough. Archer's voice carried a warning that would have stopped most men, but Travis had always been too arrogant for his own good. Oh, but I think Mr. Navarro deserves to know what kind of woman he's dealing with, Travis continued, his smile widening. Tell him, Willow. Tell him about that night 3 years ago when you came to my room willingly. Tell him how you begged me to stop. The word tore from her throat like a physical thing, raw and desperate. Please. But the damage was done. She could see the confusion in Archer's eyes, the questions forming. Travis had always been skilled at twisting truth into poison, at making his victims complicit in their own destruction. I see she hasn't told you, Travis said with mock sympathy. How unfortunate. Though I suppose it makes sense. Hard to explain. Why a woman would throw herself at a man and then cry assault when her reputation was at stake. The world tilted around her. This was why she'd learned to stay silent, why she'd hidden behind roses and books and the safety of her father's dismissal. Words were weapons, and she'd never learned to wield them properly. Is it true? Archer's voice was carefully neutral, but she could hear the doubt creeping in. It's not. She struggled for words, for some way to explain the unexplainable. It's not how he's making it sound. But you were in his room. Archer pressed, and she could see him pulling away, building walls to protect himself from whatever truth was coming. I was 17, she whispered. He said he wanted to discuss my father's loan. Said if I didn't come, we'd lose the farm. And you believed him? Travis laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Come now, Willow. We both know you wanted to. Be there. Just like you wanted everything that happened after. The lie hung in the air like smoke, choking her. She looked at Archer, seeing the exact moment when doubt became certainty in his eyes. He was already pulling away, already deciding that she was exactly what her father had always said. Damaged goods, too broken for any decent man to want. But what Travis didn't know was that Willow Green had spent 3 years learning to survive. In silence. And this time, she wasn't going to let his poison destroy the first good thing that had ever happened to her. The silence that followed Travis's words stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Willow could feel the weight of judgment, settling over her like a shroud, the familiar suffocation of shame that had kept her quiet for 3 long years. But something was different this time. Something had changed in the weeks since Archer had first seen worth in her silence. You're right, Travis, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I was 17, and I was terrified. Travis's smile faltered slightly. Now, Willow, I'm not finished. The words rang out with a strength that surprised even her. You told me my father's loan was in default. You said the bank would foreclose unless I came to discuss arrangements. I was 17, and I believed you because I trusted that a man in your position wouldn't lie about something so important. Archer's eyes were fixed on her face, no longer pulling away but listening with that same intense attention he'd always given her words. The doubt was still there, but something else flickered alongside it. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. When I got to your room, she continued, you offered me whiskey. Said it would help me relax while we discussed business. I'd never had liquor before, didn't know how it would affect me. But you did. This is ridiculous, Travis sputtered, but his bravado was cracking. You can't rewrite history to suit your purposes. I'm not rewriting anything. I'm finally telling the truth. Willow's hands were shaking, but her voice held firm. You gave me drink after drink while you talked about how pretty I was, how much you'd always admired me. When I tried to leave, you blocked the door. When I tried to scream, you told me no. One would believe me, that everyone would think I was just a desperate farm girl trying to trap a wealthy man. The memory was like touching a live coal, searing and immediate. But she pushed through it, driven by something stronger than fear. The knowledge that Archer deserved the truth and that she deserved to be believed. What happened next? Archer asked quietly. Nothing, she said, meeting his eyes. Nothing happened because I fought. I may have been drunk and frightened, but I wasn't helpless. I broke his lamp, cut my hand on the glass, and ran home bleeding and crying. She came to my room willingly, Travis insisted, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Ask anyone who saw her. You're right, Willow said. I did come willingly, because I was a naive girl who thought she was helping her family. But what you tried to do after that, that wasn't willing. That was assault. Prove it, Travis sneered. It's your word against mine, just like it was 3 years ago. Actually, a new voice interrupted. It's not. They all turned to see Kai. Sheridan approaching, his face grim. The sheriff's deputy had been Travis's friend once, back when they were boys, but time and experience had a way of changing a man's perspective. Kai, Travis said, his voice carefully neutral. I didn't know. You were back in town. Got in this morning. Heard you were spreading the same lies you told 3 years ago. Kai's hand rested casually on his gun belt, but his eyes were hard as flint. Funny thing about lies, Travis. They have a way of unraveling when you poke at them long enough. I don't know what you mean. I mean, I did some digging after you left town. Talked to folks. Turns out you had quite a pattern of entertaining young women in your room. Mary Hutchinson, Sarah Chun, the pastor's daughter. All of them too scared to speak up, just like Willow. Willow felt her knees go weak. She wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. That's not. Travis started. I also talked to Doc Peterson. Kai continued relentlessly. He remembers treating a young woman for cuts on her hands 3 years ago. Cuts that looked like they came from broken glass. He kept records, Travis. Detailed records. The color drained from Travis's face. You can't prove anything. Maybe. Not. But I can make sure everyone in this county knows exactly what kind of man you really are. Kai's smile was sharp as a blade. Question is, do you want to stick around and find out how that works out for you? For a moment, Travis looked like he might fight. His companions shifted nervously behind him, clearly regretting their association with his return. But then his shoulders sagged, and Willow saw him for what he really was, not the powerful predator who'd haunted her nightmares, but a weak man who thrived on the silence of his victims. This isn't over, he said, but the words lacked conviction. Yes, it is, Archer said quietly. His voice carried a finality that made Travis take a step back. You'll leave now, and you won't come back. It wasn't a request. Travis mounted his horse with jerky, angry movements. You're welcome to her, Navarro. Just remember, damaged goods never hold their value. He spurred his horse and rode away, his companions trailing behind like the cowards they were. The dust cloud they raised seemed to carry away 3 years of shame and silence with it. Willow stood in the settling dust, trembling from head to toe. She'd done it. She'd finally spoken the truth, and the world hadn't ended. But now came the harder part, facing the man she loved and hoping he could see past the damage to the woman underneath. Willow, Archer said softly. She turned to face him, expecting to see pity or disgust or the careful distance men adopted when they realized a woman came with complications. Instead, she saw fury, not at her, but for her. I should have killed him, he said simply. Archer, 3 years. You've been carrying this alone for 3 years. He stepped closer, his hands hovering near her face as if she might break at his touch. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid you'd think what everyone else thought. That I was complicit somehow. That I brought it on myself. Never. The word came out fierce, absolute. Never think that. What he did to you, that wasn't your fault. Not any of it. But I was in his room. I did drink the whiskey. You were 17 and trying to save your family's farm. You trusted someone who didn't deserve it. And he betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. Archer's hands finally found her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize she was crying. That doesn't make you damaged, Willow. That makes you a survivor. The word hit her like a revelation. Survivor. Not victim, not damaged goods, survivor. I understand now, he continued, why you learned to stay quiet. Why you built walls around yourself. But I need you to know something. What happened to you doesn't change how I feel. If anything, it makes me admire you more. How can you say? That, because I've spent 3 weeks watching you bloom back to life, and now I know how hard that must have been. You didn't just survive what he did to you. You found a way to heal, to trust again, to love again. The word hung between them, like a bridge. Love, she whispered. I love you, Willow Green. I love your strength and your gentleness, and the way you talk to roses like they're old friends. I love the woman you were before Travis Brooks tried to break you, and I love the woman you became after he failed. But even as joy bloomed in her, just like her beloved roses, the sound of approaching thunder reminded her that some storms couldn't be weathered with words alone, and this one was heading straight for them. The storm hit 3 hours later with the fury of nature unleashed. Willow stood at her bedroom window, watching the rain lash against the glass while lightning split the sky like cracks in a mirror. But for the first time in 3 years, the chaos outside felt less frightening than the peace inside her heart. Archer had left after the confrontation with Travis, but not before extracting a promise that they would talk more when the weather cleared. He'd kissed her forehead with reverent gentleness, as if she were something precious that needed protecting, and the memory of that touch still warmed her skin. Willow. Phoebe's voice came from the doorway, uncharacteristically subdued. Can I come in? She turned to find her sister hovering uncertainly, her usual confidence replaced by something that looked almost like shame. Of course. Phoebe closed the door behind her and leaned against it, studying her hands. I owe you an apology. Actually, I owe you about 1,000 apologies. Phoebe, no, let me say this. I heard what happened with Travis today. Kai told Mama, and Mama told me. Phoebe's voice cracked slightly. I knew something had happened to you 3 years ago. You changed so suddenly, became so quiet. But I was too selfish to ask, too caught up in my own little world to notice my sister was hurting. Willow felt tears prick her eyes. You couldn't have known. I should have. Sisters are supposed to protect each other, and instead I spent 3 years making jokes about how quiet you were, how you needed to be more social. God, Willow, I'm so sorry. You don't need to apologize for being yourself. You're bright and social and charming. All the things I never was. But that's just it, Phoebe said, crossing to sit on the bed beside her. I was so busy being the bright sister that I never saw how much light you actually had. The way you care for things, how you listen to people, the gentleness you bring to everything you touch. That's worth more than all my chatter. Mr. Navarro helped me see that. He loves you. It wasn't a question. I could see it in how he defended you today, how he looked at you, like you were the most precious thing in the world. He asked me to marry him, to go to California with him. Phoebe's eyes widened. And I said no. What? The word came out sharper than intended. Willow, you love him too. Anyone with eyes can see it. Because I was afraid. Because I thought the truth about Travis would destroy everything. Willow looked out at the storm again, watching the way the rain made everything clean. But maybe fear isn't a good enough reason to give up happiness. Maybe it's not. Phoebe agreed softly. The crash of thunder shook the house, followed immediately by the sound of horses in the yard. Willow peered through the rain-streaked window and saw 3 riders approaching at a gallop, their figures hunched against the driving wind. That's Archer, she said, recognizing his silhouette even through the storm. And Kai, who's the 3rd rider? Before Phoebe could answer, their father's voice boomed from downstairs. Willow, get down here. Now. They exchanged worried glances and hurried downstairs to find the 3 men dripping in the front hall, their faces grim with urgency. What's wrong? Willow asked, her heart already racing. It's Travis, Kai said without preamble. He didn't leave town like we thought. Instead, he went to the saloon and got himself liquored up, started telling anyone who'd listen that you were a liar and a whore. Said he was going to make you pay for embarrassing him. He's got a gun, Archer added, water streaming from his coat. And he's headed this way with 2 of his friends. They're drunk and angry and looking for trouble. Her father stepped forward, his shotgun already in his hands. Then they'll find it. No man threatens my daughter under my roof. Pa, Willow started. I know I haven't been the father I should have been, he said gruffly. Been too quick to find fault, too slow to see your worth. But I'll be damned if I let some drunk coward hurt my girl. The words hit her like a physical blow. After 22 years, her father was finally defending her. They'll be here soon, the 3rd rider said. Willow recognized him now as Dr. Peterson, the man who treated her wounds 3 years ago. I came to help however I can. That boy's been poisoning this town long enough. This isn't your fight, Archer said to her father and the doctor. I can handle Travis. Like hell, her father replied. This is my land, my family. We stand together or not at all. Another crash of thunder masked the sound of approaching horses, but Willow could feel them coming like a pressure in her chest. Her old instincts screamed at her to hide, to make herself small and invisible until the danger passed, but she was done hiding. I want to face him, she said quietly. Absolutely not, Archer said immediately. I won't let you. You won't let me. She turned to face him, and he must have seen something in her eyes that made him step back. I've spent 3 years letting Travis Brooks control my life through fear. I won't do it anymore. Willow, he's dangerous. So am I. The words surprised her as much as anyone else. I'm not the scared 17-year-old girl he remembers. I'm a woman who's learned that silence can be strength, but sometimes speaking up is stronger. The sound of horses in the yard cut off any further argument. Through the window, they could see 3 figures dismounting, their movements loose and careless with drink. Willow Green. Travis's voice cut through the storm like a blade. Come out here and face what you've done. Her father moved toward the door, but she caught his arm. Let me. Absolutely not. Pa, please. I need to do this. I need to show myself, that I'm not afraid anymore. She walked to the door before anyone could stop her and stepped out onto the porch. The rain immediately soaked through her dress, but she held her ground, meeting Travis's bloodshot gaze with steady calm. I'm here, Travis. What did you want to say? I want you to tell these people the truth, he shouted, swaying on his feet. Tell them how you threw yourself at me, how you begged for my attention. I already told the truth. You just didn't like what you heard. You ruined me, cost me my position, my reputation. No, she said simply. You did that to yourself the moment you decided to hurt innocent women. I never hurt anyone. I wanted to save my family's farm. You wanted to take advantage of a frightened girl. We both got what we deserved. Travis reached for his gun, but he was too drunk, too slow. Before he could clear leather, Archer was beside her, his own weapon drawn and steady. That's far enough, Archer said quietly to Travis's companions, seeing the determination in Archer's eyes and the other men emerging from the house. Suddenly seemed to realize what a poor idea this had been. They backed away, hands raised. This isn't over, Travis slurred. Yes, it is, Willow said with finality. It's been over for 3 years. You just forgot to stop fighting. Travis tried to mount his horse and failed, sliding off into the mud. His companions helped him up, and together they stumbled away into the storm, leaving nothing behind but the echo of their retreat. Willow stood in the rain for a long moment, feeling something she'd never experienced before, complete, absolute freedom. The fear that had lived in her chest for 3 years was gone, washed away by the storm and her own newfound courage. Willow, Archer said softly, holstering his gun. Come inside before you catch your death. She turned to face him, this man who'd seen worth in her silence and strength in her survival. Ask me again. What? Ask me to marry you. To go to California. With you. His smile was like sunrise after the longest night. Willow Green, will you marry me? Will you come west and build a new life where roses bloom year-round? Yes, she said, the word ringing out clear and strong. Yes to all of it. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around in the rain while lightning illuminated their joy. When he set her down, she could see her future reflected in his eyes, green valleys and clear streams. A garden where anything could grow, and children who would learn that quiet strength was just as valuable as loud courage. 6 months later, they stood in a California meadow exchanging vows under an arch of climbing roses, Lady Banks roses that had made the journey west in careful pots, proof that beautiful things could survive transplanting if they were tended with love. A.S. Archer slipped the ring onto her finger. Willow thought about the scared, silent girl she'd once been and smiled. Sometimes the most profound transformations happen not in noise and drama, but in the quiet spaces between words, where love took root and bloomed like roses in the desert. Well now, if that tale don't warm your heart like fresh coffee on a cold morning, I don't know what will. Remember to give this story a like if it touched your soul, and drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from today. We love hearing from folks all over this great big world of ours.